see you guys in the dark.
I've had a lot of strange jobs, but one of the most interesting was working for a tax company based out of Texas. I lived in Kentucky, my home state at the time, but because this company contracted out jobs remotely, I was able to make a very good living for performing tasks, which were generally very simple. I had a work partner, but not all the time, and our duty was to travel all over the eastern and central part of the state to county courthouse PVA offices. You might not have those, it's just a small town thing, and research delinquent property taxes. We were then required to compile a list of properties who had delinquent taxes and submit it to our boss. She was our primary contact in Texas. This part is important because it was the only reason we would sometimes have to deal with hostile people. The company would then buy taxes if the property tickled their fancy, and a letter was issued to the owner of the property, stating that they had a certain amount of time to repay the amount. I'm not sure what would happen after that, since that part wasn't my job. But I do know that people immediately assumed, because of a lack of knowledge or understanding of the laws, this company was going to take their property and throw them out into the streets. Before the company bought the taxes, however, they would send us back a list of the ones that they were interested in, and we would go out to the locations, photograph the property, and then submit all the photos to our Texas contact. This was where things got really interesting. It was like the property owners had some kind of psychic intuition about us. They had no idea who we were, or when we were coming, since we worked almost on our own schedule. They didn't know what kind of color car we would be in, yet somehow they would frequently burst out their front doors as we pulled up to shoot photos of the location. This made for some interesting and often frightening confrontations. After getting comfortable with the job, I even came up with a convincing story to tell angry property owners when they chased us down with their car. We're from the County Property Valuation Administration. We're just updating our property files and needed a current photo. This would often de-escalate the situation, and they'd apologize for threatening our lives, and sometimes running us off the road to make us pull over. I have a lot of stories from this job, but here's the best one. We were deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky one day, searching desperately for a single wide trailer from our list. We found a holler matching our descriptions. This is way before the GPS days, and we had to use real county maps, and took a chance. As we drove up the holler, houses began to spread out further and further away, and soon we were totally isolated. Nothing but trees and a narrow gravel road. Suddenly, we spotted the trailer. It didn't look anything like it did in the PVA picture. Time had taken a real toll on this place. Some of you might not understand this depending on where you're from, but around my home state, one grows very accustomed to the look and feel of a potential location for drug manufacturing. I know that might not make any sense, but trust me, we know immediately that this place was a prime location for a meth lab. We didn't spot the trailer until we had driven a little ways past it, so we didn't get a great photo on the way in. As usual, we decided to drive on by, turn around, and get the shot on the way back. Apparently someone saw us on the way in. This is a very rural road, and not even a road at this point, since it had turned to gravel a mile or two back. I basically had to turn the car by pulling up onto a embankment and doing what felt like a 3.2 turn to keep from getting off into a ditch. While I was turning, my buddy said, "Hey, look." I looked, and 3 people were walking out of the woods into the road. Just people, no big deal. I had the car straightened out on the road at this point, and noticed that they had weapons. A young, nasty-looking fellow was holding a baseball bat. Of all things, a nasty-looking older fellow had a shovel. Both were shirtless. And there was a screaming girl. Something clicked in my head. On the drive in, when my partner snapped the photo, I heard a girl scream. It was an angry scream, but I couldn't make out what was said. I didn't even know where it came from, and I certainly didn't think the scream was directed at us. Apparently it was. These people were now walking with intentions towards my stopped car. I kept thinking, is this really happening? And what exactly is happening? My partner was freaking out a little bit, and convinced that they were going to attack us. It's hard to explain what's going through my head at this point, because I couldn't really believe what I was seeing. The only thing that I could think was, hit him with my car. Just like on Grand Theft Auto. Otherwise, we're gonna die. They were screaming, shaking their weapons, and closing in. I was running out of time. I revved the tiny engine in my red Pontiac Grand Prix, hoping to scare them, and then I let off the gas. I plowed toward them with the fury of all 6 cylinders, or 4, however many there were. I don't really remember. They jumped out of the way last minute as I grazed by them, throwing gravel and dirt. Once we were at a safe distance, I slowed down and looked back. Luckily, they were gone. Unluckily, we were once again too far from the trailer to get a good photo. I explained this to my boss when I emailed her my day's collection of property photos, and she seemed to understand. After that, I kept a loaded .45 in my glove box. And I felt significantly more confident while doing my job. I quit a couple of years later, though. It was just too dangerous, even if I was packing heat. So to the hillbilly meth-making counterpart of Otis, Baby, and Captain Spaulding, let's not meet ever again. I met Jessica in the 4th grade, and we became best friends almost immediately. We spent all day at school together and spent time at each other's houses. She was the second oldest of 5 and the only girl. Her parents were divorced, but both were pretty nice. Our families quickly became intertwined. They were in the lower income bracket, even living in trailer parks at the time. Her mom, Gail, was a school bus driver and the only earner in the house. The oldest boy was a mentally handicapped boy and did what work he could to help out, but his mom insisted on him saving for college. At one point, Gail got hurt on the job and couldn't drive anymore. I think her back was hurt or something like that. I was quite young then, in the 5th grade at this time. I also couldn't tell what job she took as a result. But it was there that Gail met Dan. Dan, as the title implies, looked a lot like Robin Williams, but skinnier and taller. They had a short courtship and then soon married. I remember him being a strict man with the boys, but not with Jessica. He would sometimes be verbally abusive to them, calling them dumb and retarded. But he would also play with us kids. He loved to have tickle fights, and I remember this so clearly. Loved to tickle Jess and me on the super upper inner thigh. I didn't like being touched there, but didn't ever have a reason why. I just didn't want him to. While I never mentally cited him as the reason, it was around this point that I stopped wanting to go over to Jessica's house. I always wanted her to spend the night at my place, and to be honest, she preferred it that way as well. But my father thought that I was being disrespectful due to their low income. I have a crippling fear of bugs, and I know at one point they had roaches, but that was before Dan was in the picture. So he would set an appointment with Gail to have me over there. They moved around a lot, and Jessica was no longer in the same school. Sometimes she was even in different cities, and yet we still kept in contact, and she'd visit me when she could. Then came her 12th birthday. It was at a hotel. We were a bunch of girls who would get a separate room from her parents and spend the night swimming or just hanging out. I didn't stay the night. Either I legitimately had a prior plan, or I just didn't plain want to do it. But I did hang out a bit. We spent most of the time in the pool area, if not all of it. I couldn't tell you what the rooms looked like, or even what the rest of the hotel looked like. Gail and Dan had just had a newborn. Boy number 5, kid number 6. And Gail frequently had to excuse herself to feed or change the baby. Sometimes the chlorine in the air bothered him, or something, so she left Dan in charge of us. A bunch of prepubescent girls in bathing suits. Sometimes he would just watch, super intently, and other times he'd get in the pool with us and toss us about or whatever. I went home with no incident, but that was the last time I saw Dan in person. Fast forward 4 years. Jess comes over unannounced, but unusual though. She'd usually call to make sure we were actually home, and tells me and my mother what happened. Though it will be no shock to the readers to discover that Dan had been molesting Jessica ever since they were married. Molesting feels too soft. Raping, more like. He had been raping her almost every night. Gail would be out on meds she would have to take to sleep. She was in a lot of pain from injury that she'd sustained, and he'd go into Jess's room and do that to her over and over. She was afraid to tell her mom, afraid she wouldn't believe her, and even doubting it all herself. My parents and I both convinced her to tell her mom. Her mom, mother of the fucking year, promptly divorced his ass and took him to court, on top of the pedophilia charge, and because she was at the age of consent at 16, plain old rape charges. He also got mad at Gail when she threw him out and punched her, so he also got battery on top of that. All in all, and with some other lesser charges, he got about 10 to 20 years, and waiting for when he gets out, a restraining order against Gail, Jess, and the boys. Jess had a rough life since then, but with some therapy, she's one of the most hard-working people that I know, usually having 2 or 3 jobs at once, with 2 sons. I still talk to her and her family, as they do us. We're not as close as we used to be, but still thick as relatives. I'll start off by giving you some background information. It was 2009. I was roughly 18 or 19 years old. I'm a female, by the way, living in a trailer house out at the open of a holler in Kentucky. Williamsburg, for those that are familiar. When my boyfriend Josh and our roommate Brent, who both worked in town at the local Mickey D's. I had just moved to town, so I didn't have a job yet. One night, Josh and Brent both had to work the late shift and left me home alone. This wasn't unusual, and had happened a few times before. The way our trailer was set up was you walked up some steps to a porch, where the front door was. Upon entering, it's the living room with a hallway to the right where mine and Josh's room and a spare room was. Brent had the master bedroom to the left through the living room and kitchen area. There was a back door that was also in the kitchen next to the master bedroom door. There wasn't much in our living room except for a TV, a Xbox, and a couple of couches, within a bat laid next to the front door. Anyways, I was sitting on the couch nearest the front door, which has 2 windows on both sides the couch, which was directly in front of one of them, watching TV as I usually did, being I had no phone or any other way to contact the outside world. Several hours into me watching TV, around 12 a.m., I heard the front door knob jiggle like someone was trying to get in. My heart instantly dropped into my stomach, with no way to contact anyone, and the nearest neighbor being across a huge field way out of earshot. I thought for sure that I was dead. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kentucky, there's a stereotype. Crazy hillbilly that supposedly wander around and live in said hollers. I figured this was just used to scare kids and rowdy teens. Well, apparently, I was wrong. I got up and grabbed the bat next to the couch I was sitting on to see if maybe it was my roommate or my boyfriend coming home from work early. But seeing as how I hadn't heard a car arrive, or any doors since this was highly unlikely anyways, when I looked through the peephole, whoever it was had it covered, so I couldn't see their face. I nearly pissed myself. I turned off all the lights and locked every window and door in the house, hoping that he or she would just go away if I ignored them. Dear God, I was wrong. This person proceeded to jiggle the front door handle some more. Some trailers have doors that open pretty easy if you mess with them enough. Till I guess that they got frustrated and ran around the back door and started the same jiggling, trying to see into the window on the back door. This went on for a good 20 minutes. This person just terrorizing me, running back and forth from door to door, then started to bang and shake all the windows as they ran around my house. At this point, I'm in a ball crying in the living room on the floor, with the bat praying they wouldn't try to break down the old-ass doors. Eventually, after about 45 minutes of terrorizing me, I guess they gave up and went back to wherever they came from. My boyfriend showed up about 15 minutes later, and I made him check the house and outside. We never found anyone, but we did find some footprints in the mud that were smudged in the morning. Whoever this hillbilly may be, I really hope that I never see them again. During my 9th grade, which is the final stages of school here before everyone goes off to whatever high school they want to be educated by, I went to 3 different schools. 3 weeks into the new semester after the summer break, my family moved across the country, from a, on paper, large city to a village on the countryside. I had to travel to school either by bus or by car to the new school. I have a phobia of public transportation, so I refused to take the bus. My mother had to drive me to school and back in the afternoon every day. I don't think me having to take the bus would have changed the outcome of my experience in this school anyways. The new school was so much larger than the one that I had gone to previously, and the climate were altogether very different. I had students from all villages close to the town where the school was placed. I would suppose that a lot of students were not as genetically diverse that most other people in the Western world. The school had very little amount of foreigners and a huge portion of racists. The new class had just 3 other girls, and the rest of the class was just guys. It soon became clear that they didn't like foreigners, and by that I mean anyone that wasn't that said part of the country. Most of the guys seemed to be racist, bullying anyone who didn't belong. One of them bragged to have hacked into the NASA, and one of them had killed a bat that they found in the classroom. The only sane person in my class was a girl from Iran. I honestly don't know how she managed to go to that school for so long when I didn't last for very long. At one time, I talked to the school counselor about the bullying, but when shit hit the fan, she chose to believe the guy's side of the story and not mine. To make friends, I had added people from school on MSN. I didn't know who was who if they even went to my school. Some of the people were nice. Some never said anything, and some just not my cup of tea. The MSN experience didn't work out as I planned, though. A few weeks into the new semester, after the winter holidays, I was added into a group chat on MSN with people from my school. It became a witch hunt, me being the hunted one. I got out of there, but they kept popping up in private chats, or just adding back into the large group. I got messages saying stuff like they planned to assault me in a group of all the guys in school, and whatnot. Me being a girl, I reasoned that the outcome would not be very pleasant, so I refused to return to the school. I guess this experience wasn't as scary as many other stories, but when this happened, I avoided windows for weeks. My parents had to clean out my locker in school and talk to my teachers. I avoided the town where the school was located like the plague for years, and never went there alone. I abandoned my MSN and made a new one. Had my friend log into it, and deleting membership to sites in my name. I have kept the yearbook from the school with names of everyone just in case. I don't think the police were ever contacted. I don't think it would have led anywhere because I wasn't harmed physically. I hope I never get to meet any one of them again, and if I do, I hope they have a shitty life. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.